This is Rob Thompson with Game Plan U today. This is today, but it's tonight for Marcus over there in Malaysia. How you doing, Marcus?
I'm doing great, Rob. Thanks for being inviting me to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though it's a little dark, it is dark. It's
It is. It's an evening here, yeah. So I didn't quite work out to get better lighting here, but hey, it's all home production here.
That's exactly. I mean, look, at any moment, my wife's going to be coming, probably walking behind me, and kids will be screaming in the room. So who cares?
Exactly. Right? It's all part of it.
It's all part of it. So talk about where you're from, where you are right now, how you got there, your journey to get to this point, and the fact that you have zero lighting at all. So I'm sure, I don't know what the heck is going on, but let's talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, if you can just about make me out there, that's good. That's good enough. I think at least you can hear me. So my journey, right? So I'm originally from Germany, ended up in the United States, doing a master's degree there at TCU. So I'm a proud Horned Frog from Texas. And ended up working at the Football World Cup 1994 in the United States. So this was, as usual, one thing led to the other there. I had an amazing internship with American Airlines where I was doing some of their World Cup marketing campaigns. And one thing led to the other. And I guess for number one, I'm a huge sports fan anyway. So this was sort of maybe a dream come true or some destiny for me to land in this space. And pretty quickly after the World Cup, I ended up in Asia. So I call it real first job was in Hong Kong at the end of '94, for working for another sports marketing agency at that time here in Asia. Did that for 3 years, and then in 1997 I launched my own agency called TSA, or Total Sports Asia. And we've been one of the founding fathers of the sports marketing industry in Asia for over 20 years now. We're on the commercial side of it, so our job is to find new revenue streams for IP owners. And we worked with everyone from WWE Wrestling. This was actually our first really big client. We made a lot of it to get money with them together. To the US Open Tennis, just to pick a couple of American sports properties, to lots of football properties out of Europe. And everything in between. We did a lot of work in sort of the Asian-centric sports, from record sports, badminton, table tennis, squash, etc. We've done reasonably well. We generated quite a lot of money for those kind of folks, over $500 million worth over those years, and that's what we do. Of course, as you do as an agency, as an entrepreneur, you constantly look at new ways of engaging. So we do some consulting business now with governments here in Asia to help them figure out how to develop sports further. We've got into the tech space. We launched our own OTT platform here in the region a couple of years ago. We do some things in the real estate branding space. So we flip-flop the concept of a naming rights deal. So in this case, it's not the brand who pays to be on the building, but the developer pays the brand to leverage the power of the brand. So it's a co-branding kind of concept, and a few other things. So it's a longer introduction, but you get the idea. We do a lot of different things here.
So talk about the countries and talk about the businesses that you're calling on. So in Asia, obviously, it's a massive area. So talk about the businesses that you're bringing these media rights to. Like, who's buying from you? Who are you representing? Who are you talking to?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not so much focused on what we're doing maybe now at this particular moment, but more what we've done really over those 20 plus years. So we represent, as I said, global rights owners, the largest of the biggest brands you can think of, or names in the world of sports content owners. And we help them place them here with the platform owners, whether that is traditional television rights owners, of course, initially, right? You would go still to the free-to-air boys and the pay TV platforms. Pay TV has been around for about 20 years in Asia. So around the time when we started, that was sort of starting here in a bigger way. Now, of course, you have digital platforms, you have OTT platforms out here as well. And so the ecosystem is not that different than what you would have maybe in the US. But every country is different, of course, right? We deal with multiple countries. So the dynamics are different here. If you're talking about a country like Japan, of course, it's much more sophisticated than India, than Thailand or Malaysia or in between. So, we always work across the whole region. And that's challenging. That's exciting because the industry, the countries are in very different development stages, and so therefore you deal with those infrastructures, and you deal with very, very different type of clients in terms of their own sophistication of how to leverage the power of sports. But the beautiful part is they all love sports, right? Asia loves sports as much as the rest of the world. It may be different types. Football is probably the number one sport in the general sense. Of course, cricket is it in the subcontinent, and then baseball is very strong in Japan, Korea. So you do have your nuances there. Basketball in the Philippines, but overall, football is a very, very big. And when I say football, of course, I mean soccer. And that's all the sports we're participated in over the years.
What do you see happening now? Now that the industry is obviously taking a timeout, a massive timeout, a global timeout. What's happening over there? What's the industry saying in Asia right now? And how are you guys pivoting? And what are they looking for? Maybe is it preparing for how does that fan engagement happen now at home, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, again, I think there are two parts to it. Number one, of course, the big global leagues. Let's take the Premier League is the number one league in terms of football out here in Asia. With these type of leagues not playing, of course, they're you were watching as much reruns as you guys are right now, so that's not helping anyone. And where we are pivoting into is definitely esports as well. That's something we've been doing now, not because of the crisis, but we started way before that. We definitely saw there's an opportunity, so we launched a brand or part of the company we call Total Esports. To be very creative there, and that's interesting because as much as there are, of course, differences in the genre and in the way the content is generated, but I do believe, and again, coming from the commercial side, there's a lot of similarities, and the similarities are really in you have content, you have teams, you have athletes, and that's our job, right? We help monetize this, we help commercialize those parts, and I do see already, as I said, what we've been doing here for the last few years. There's some very, very unique opportunities to do something very similar to what we've done in the traditional world of sports. So that's one, and clearly that's helping right now because those esports events, or not so much the live events as in the events with audiences in a stadium, but the online events, of course, they're all still happening. So there's plenty of esports content. Otherwise, we do a lot of other things. As the consulting business still continues on. That's good. But we do have started to get a bit involved with, I guess, helping to beat that virus out here. And so we're looking at certain elements from delivering, branded masks. So we're having a conversation with football clubs right now and their sponsors of how they could maybe leverage this. So we're taking advantage in a sense of that these masks are needed, and you might as well put a brand on it and let people play with it. So, as I said, the simplest way to look at me is I'm a crazy entrepreneur who constantly sees opportunities and we will play in them.
What do you see happening in the tech space, from fan engagement to sponsor activation? What are some of those conversations that you're having with sponsors about how do we reach people now that may not necessarily be at the stadium? And then from a sponsor activation, like the masks and other creative ways, how does sports technology, sponsorship, and kind of that digital immersion, where are you finding that's kind of getting to the point now of new technology that's going to disrupt the market?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, I had a couple of really interesting conversations with a couple of groups over the last week or two who are building some very, very unique digital platforms. And again, I'm sure others on the show would have said this already, that currently when these clubs or leagues have how many hundreds of millions of followers on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or whatever, you don't own that fan, right? We all know who owns it. Unfortunately, in most cases, Mr. Zuckerberg. So that doesn't help you as a club at all. Unfortunately, every club I think in the world has worked that out way too late. And they gave up their most valuable real estate, which is their website. We did a study last year on websites from NBA teams, major football leagues around the world, etc. And to no one's surprise, they all look the same. They're very much formulated and boring as hell. And if you ask the average sports fan, when's the last time you went to your club's website, most people say never, or they barely could remember it. Because the only reason you might go there is if they have a ticket service, of course, and you may be still buying tickets there. Otherwise, they really have nothing there. So that's a big problem. I think clubs, leagues around the world have given up that real estate, in my mind, and I do think there are opportunities for that to re-engage fans. We played around with everything from blockchain technology, where you tokenize things, and a fan can earn token by engaging more with you in different ways. That again, it's a form of loyalty program in that sense, right? So I think there is some interesting people going in that direction. Around the world. So there is a lot of different things. We've had another conversation with the group is very much in the fantasy world space. They're getting plenty of calls right now of people who are saying, look, we got these databases right now, especially if you're in the gaming world, which is just dormant, right? No one is betting on anything because there's nothing to bet on. So these guys are just desperately looking to find ways to re-engage that audience. And if it means to play something which is at least along the lines of, you can bet on something and you create a, sort of a mock-up fantasy league structure, then that's not a bad idea. So I think it's really broad from what I've seen. And of course, I have these conversations all the time. No one has found the magic formula yet. I think everyone is still cracking that. Everyone is still somewhat stuck in the old model. And when I say old model, it's the new, digital model, but it's the old model of, send your folks to Facebook, gather a bunch of people there and then tell your sponsors you got 100 million followers like Man United has, or, Real Madrid, or some of these big teams have, or even the athletes, right? If you take Cristiano Ronaldo, I think he has 400 million followers on social media across all the different social media platforms. That's amazing. That's fantastic. And he gets paid a lot of money to put branding and things up there. But unfortunately, it's still a fraction of probably what he should be earning if this would be in a platform which he controls a lot more. So I think I don't have all the answers there yet, but there is a lot of smart folks working on it.
So what's happening for those of us that, still consider football in America, the NFL and college football, for those listeners who really don't understand, or maybe don't have enough connection back to the Asian market, talk about that a little bit. When we look at South Korea, the first thing that comes up for us over here is great in esports, leading the way in esports. When you think of Japan, obviously coming off of the Olympics being moved, the Japanese and technology and what's happening in China behind this in the technology, and then Singapore, and then where's the money coming from? Where's the technology coming from? Just give us a landscape of each country and what's happening within those countries.
Sure. I mean, I think when it comes to technology, honestly, I think the leader in our world here, and maybe in the whole world, is China. Right? I mean, if you look at how far they're ahead in terms of generating new platforms there, if you look at Weibo or other platforms which are, let's say, the equivalent of Weibo is an equivalent of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram together, right? It's not one, three different versions as we have, let's say, in the Western world. If you look at WeChat, which is the WhatsApp of China, again, way more sophisticated. You pay, everyone pays in China. No one pays with cash anymore. Everyone pays through their phone, whether it's through Alipay or WeChat. So the digitalization in China is, in my mind, way ahead. And I realized that years ago. I've been running in and out of China for 20 years. A couple of years back, when I walked through a little alley there, and there was this little lady sitting there on the side of the road, basically having a sewing machine there. You can get your socks fixed or something. And she had a little button there on next to her machine where you could pay on through your WeChat account. I mean, this is about as rudimentally as it gets. But that's where China is. We're not talking about your Starbucks where you pay with it. That's normal anyway. So I think the rest of the world needs to watch China more than any other country on the planet for that. The way they digitize their content. Both on the content side as well. Now, again, I'm not saying they have cracked the biggest question or the biggest issue, and that is the commercialization of it, right? I don't think anyone has that, right? I think DAZN, which is obviously in the US as well, is one of the probably biggest player in the world, buying major rights, pushing big in the market. They're large in Japan as well. It was one of their earliest markets they started off with. They bought the Japanese Football League rights for, I think, over $1 billion for the next 10 years. And on the back of it, done fairly well there. But it's still, Asia has the same problem as many parts of the world have, is that people, the minute you go digital, the minute you go online, there is a more of a perception that it should be free. People don't want to pay for it. And that's a big issue here. If you see Netflix, obviously they've done very well in the US. When they go globally, they do struggle a little more because first of all, a couple other things which maybe your listeners wouldn't be necessarily aware of. The credit card penetration in general, and let's leave the Japans and some of the more sophisticated markets out, Singapore, etc. But if you go to Indonesia, you go to Thailand, you go to Philippines or India even, credit card penetration is very low here, which means it's not quite as simple to subscribe to a subscription-based model, even if you wanted to. So that's a very different challenge. We found that when we started our platform, it's called Sports Fix, which is sort of as I said, the first OTT platform in sports here in the region. And we had to pivot like crazy constantly because we thought, hey, the Netflix model should work, right? We were obviously modeling it after that to some degree. It wasn't. So it all became very clear that it has to be much more of an advertising-driven model. And so it's a challenge. But there are different models being played out here. Asia does operate differently than the rest of the world, but both sides learn from each other. I think that's the fun part.
It just seems like there's so much further along, like you said, in advancement. Are you seeing the VC dollars and funds and money flowing out of Asia as well? Are they supporting their own tech startups, or do you still find that that's coming from other parts of the world?
Again, well, you have a bit of a mix, I think. China has very, very sophisticated VC structures there, and the money, but the money is mostly kept within the country. It maybe doesn't travel as far out yet. Of course, you have Japan, big funds there. SoftBank, the hundreds of billions which they're sitting on, and that does come into the region here. Southeast Asia, let's say the region where I hang out here. That is, it's pretty well supported with large Japanese funding, and then you do have the global funds who have offices in Singapore and Hong Kong, and they do look at the region. So it is you usually have a bit of both. It is nowhere near as sophisticated, of course, as you would see in Silicon Valley or the American market. The Europeans don't show up as much here, at least from a VC funding point of view. Of course, they're here in the other ways. So again, there is a bit of it is money for the region, from the region, and then of course everything in between.
Just words of wisdom out there from Marcus in Total Sports Asia. Thank you so much for educating us on what's happening out there. It's just incredible because this is the first time ever in I guess our lifetime that all of us are in the same exact situation and at the same time, and a total recalibration of everything in industry, in people's personal lives and relationships. And this has given us a time to step back and know that relationships and lives and people matter, and they're not disposable. And relationships like this just don't happen without reason and connection. And sharing your time with us today and the network that we've built here and connecting over to you guys on the tiny island in the beach, probably behind you with mermaids and palm trees. Yeah. So Marcus, thank you for your time. I mean, it's just been educational, and I do want to talk about, before I let you go, I want to talk about your mastermind group that you mentioned. If you're happy to talk about that, why don't you give a update on that and what's the purpose and how people could connect with you on that?
Totally, and I'd love to. Thanks, and thanks for throwing that over here. As you know, I host a podcast as well. It's called the Sports Entrepreneurs Podcast, so anyone can find that as well. And hopefully, I have you on it next time as well, as we talked about. And what I did on the back of it, and I created what's now called the Sports Entrepreneurs Mastermind Group, and I hosted 3 sessions yesterday, 2 hours each, in 3 different time zones. So everyone. Different people from around the world were able to participate, and so we had a great different audiences from across Asia, Middle East, and the last session, which was similar at 9 o'clock at night now, we had the US, Europe, Africa on at that time. So what we basically do, it's a mixture. It was a 2-hour session where the first sort of, let's say, 45 minutes is me giving almost a bit of a lecture, if that's the right word, teaching a little bit of from my 25 years experience. The topic was sports marketing after COVID, where the world will be. So I was sharing some of my thoughts. What I've learned over the last few crises is 2008 and 1997, other things here we had in the region. And that was part of it. And then the other hour was really what I would call a river flow, where we would pick on topics, and people would comment and discuss and ask questions and comment from their experience from whatever part of the world they're in and whatever part of the industry they're in. So incredible learning. It was really it was a lot of fun. We had about 50, 60 people across those 3 calls. And it was the first time I did it. So hopefully we'll do more of that. And maybe next time you can join one of those. It was really very stimulating.
I would love to. How do people get a hold of you and find out more information? I know you're pretty active, really active in LinkedIn, but how do they find more information about the mastermind and then just get in contact with you directly?
Yeah, sure. That's good. It's really easy. MarcusLuer.com. So it's MarcusLuer.com. That's the easy one. That's my website where all my stuff is on, the podcast, the mastermind, and everything in between. So just try to find me there.
Well, please reach out. Please reach out to you. I mean, you're definitely a great conduit for us here at Game Plan U on the Asian markets and just you in general, regardless of whether you went to college in Texas or not, doesn't matter.
You'll forgive me on that one, right?
But originally from Germany, came here. Now he's in Southeast Asia. You are, you're the international man of mystery. So,
thank you. I take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment. So thank you for spending your time with us. I know it's very late at night over there. Thanks for joining us on Game Plan U today. So on behalf of Marcus, myself, thanks everybody. Be safe out there and take care.
Definitely. Thank you. I'll talk to you again soon. Cheers. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.